This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information that will expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers.
My fellow network engineers, this is a time for unity. You know what? Let me walk back my opening words. We are inclusive here on this podcast. Bring me your engineers, yes, but also bring me your admins, architects and specialists, designers, desktop support, and help desk too. We are nothing if we are not together. Granted, I do apologize if you are one person that happens to have every single one of the roles I just mentioned above. Christeni. Only joking, we know that's your superpower. We need to not think of these roles as siloed entities, but as one cohesive unit functioning toward a common goal. We must put our petty differences aside and find some common ground that we can all agree on, like decreasing the stretch layer 2 deficit, or maybe even that wireless link budget. Our power levels don't need to be that high. Anyway, thank you for your time this evening, and remember that all are welcome here at the Art of Network Engineering.
Thank you, President Tim. Beautiful speech. Got my vote for another term.
Oh, cool.
Get this man
Thought
back
I was
in
fired
office.
on my first day.
Well, good evening. I am AJ Murray at No Blinky Blinky. Full house tonight. Very exciting. We have more people joining us on the live stream audience than I think we've ever had. So this is definitely a notable time in the podcast history. So thank you so much to our Patreons for joining us tonight. Dan at Howdy Packet. Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, AJ. How about yourself?
I'm doing very good. What's new in Dan's world?
Just some more Palo stuff at the moment. Some global protect.
Rocking the Palos.
Yes, buddy.
Excellent. At Tim Bertino, I think we'll see soon at President Tim on Twitter.
You don't want to
How
vote
are
for
you,
me.
Tim?
If you had any slightest idea of what I've been doing with my campaign funds, you would not vote for me anymore. Anyway, AJ, I'm doing good. Glad to be back again. Glad we got a full house this evening. It's going to be a good show.
Absolutely. And last but not least, at Andy Laptef, permit IP Andy.com. Andy, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Is it
man.
Andy or Zandy? You've been pretty Zandy lately.
I was Andy until about 3 days ago when we got a puppy, and this puppy's just kicking my butt up and down the street. All I do is clean pee off the floor. It's awful.
Yeah, I saw you put a poll out for some names on Twitter. Did you land on one?
The kids rule this roost. They named her Daisy.
Oh,
She's Daisy.
Nice.
Yeah, I was going to bring her in here, but I have a rug in here, and we had to pull all the rugs out, like the area rugs, out of the house because she pees on anything with cloth. So
Yeah.
she's not in here because I was afraid she'd go on the floor. But yeah, man, I'm better than I've been in a while, AJ, for sure.
Yeah, I think that I think we've all noticed.
Should I apologize for?
No, definitely not.
I'm starting to wonder if there's a reason why.
Yeah,
Oh, he's good. He's good.
Tim and those leading questions.
Yeah. So I guess this is the part of the show where I should make my announcement. Yeah.
Well, it's going to
What's
be.
going on, Andy? All right. So I have accepted a role at Juniper, which I'm really excited about. I'm going to be a product manager of something they call Cloud Ready Data Center Platform. So I'm still trying to get my head around the role, and I've spoken to a bunch of people who have reached out to me already who work there, which has been really nice. So when this comes out, I'll have been there 2 weeks, but right now I'm in the middle of a month off. I'm 2 weeks, through my 4 weeks off, and I just took some time off hanging around the house. I went out to Colorado for a week, hung out with my mom, and just I I was worn out, and I don't know if burnout's the right term, but anybody who listens to this show, I apologize for the whining that you've had to endure, but I've just been worn out for a while. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. As high level, I think what I'll be doing there, I'll have some input and some influence over the products and features that Juniper develops and releases. So really what I'm hoping to do, my intent is to take my experience as an end user, right, of networking products like all of us, and try to make the networking world, just a little bit better. If I can be the voice of the user and help drive some innovation that helps people like you and I, everybody complains, right, about this vendor, that vendor, this thing doesn't do. I've done it myself. So, that's the announcement. I'm super psyched. It's this huge opportunity. I'm really grateful for it. And I think I'm going to be happy.
Well, Andy, I want to be one of the first to kind of publicly congratulate you. As the team of co-hosts, we talk, and I'm not joking, we talk daily, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe even hourly. But if too much time elapses and we haven't heard from each other, I think we just kind of check in. And so, we've been on this, roller coaster ride right along with Andy, and so to finally be able to talk about it, to finally be able to congratulate you, I hope you're seeing the chats that are going on. Everybody's cheering for you right now.
That's awesome.
Congratulations, man. So will this be, if you're doing Juniper Data Center, you're probably going to be focusing on the QFX line?
A little bit of everything. Yeah. I know that the team that I'm on, the QFX is their big bread and butter. And I know they knocked it out of or is it we now? I don't even know. They soon to be we knocked it out of the park last year, and they just crushed their projections. So they're killing it. It's QFXs. I mean, I know in my previous role, we consumed a lot of their gear. The MXs, the QFXs, the ACXs. I think we bought everything that they made. And Juniper has again, I don't know enough to speak intelligently about this yet, but they bought Apstra, which I've been looking at, and that seems really cool. It's like a kind of automation / fabric management / GUI kind of. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, by the time this comes out, I'll have been there a couple of weeks, and hopefully I can speak more intelligently about, what I'm going to be doing. I mean, I didn't know it's really fun. Like, we'll have to do another episode on this, but I didn't know.
We will.
Yeah. I didn't know what a product, I didn't know it was even a role. Truth be told, I love content creation. I was talking to people about TME roles, technical marketing engineer. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, people pay you to create content. That's pretty cool. I mean, we get a lot of zeros here, AJ, but you know what I mean? It's not, not paying my mortgage
I thought
yet.
I compensated you well. I'm so shocked to hear that somebody does it better.
I'm kidding. This has been my most favorite part of my career, but because I love content creation so much with you guys, I thought, wow. So I was pursuing a TME role, and then this product manager thing popped up, and I got on the phone with this guy, Mike, who just blew me away. And, again, that's not this episode, and I don't want to take over here, but yeah, it's I didn't know what this role was a month ago, and now I'm like super stoked and super pumped, and I think it's going to be really exciting, and I'm excited to go to Juniper. I've heard great things about their culture. Culture is a big thing for me, which sounds funny because some of the places I've been at, I mean, just on Glassdoor alone, you look, they're not known for like, hey, awesome cultures. I'm not talking any smack on any of the previous places. I'm super grateful for all the opportunities I've been given. This role doesn't happen if it weren't for the ones that I've come from and learned and cut my teeth. Right. And so grateful for everything, not trying to be that guy, talking trash on people I was with. But yeah, man, thank you. It's just really exciting, and I'm really glad to share it with everybody here. So, good things to come for sure. I'm probably going to be the annoying Juniper guy soon.
I do want to echo everything that AJ said. And yeah, as soon as you said that, Andy, I about got whiplash from the chat over here from the Patreons. That was really cool to see the outpouring of support. And I just want to say, man, this is really cool to see you get this. There's not got to be a more deserving person, given everything that you've gone through. And I mean, you're such a hardworking guy. You pour your heart and soul into everything, and to see that payback and hopefully in the long run help you and your quality of life and your family. We're just really excited for you, man.
Thanks, Tim. Not that this is the audience I want to gloat to, but no maintenance windows, no on call.
and hey, this is that was coming from the guy that doesn't even like you. So I'm kidding. There's this running joke that Andy thinks I don't like him. So if he only really knew.
Well, thanks, guys.
It looks
really
like
appreciate it.
It looks like the chat has turned. They've turned on you. No, you mentioned that.
I haven't read the chat. I'm just focused on you guys. I'll catch up later.
Funny. I'm feeling an edit coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy became one of them.
Yeah.
There was a good one about a soapbox earlier.
See, Manny knows what's up. He said the Zandy versus Dan rivalry. He knows what's up.
He can sense the tension.
Well, congratulations, Andy. Why don't you take some time to catch up in the chat? And in the meantime, we'll check out who's in the winning channel this week, and then we'll come back and introduce our guest. And now it's time for some wins. This has to be the most winningest week of the year. Just some amazing stuff going on this week. So let's get right to it. Network Trials has passed the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam. Congratulations. BlackEnd01 started a new position as a network engineer. This has been a journey 5 years in the making. They've been working in tech for a very long time, some time as a network manager. They got some certifications, and they were finally able to pivot to a position as a network engineer, and they credit that to Andy and his platform pushing physical labs. He said once he put the physical lab on his resume, the hiring manager hired him and said that was the reason why he was selected over other candidates, because he was working with a physical lab and putting in that effort. Congratulations, BlackEnd01. Jacob has passed the CCIE Data Center exam. This is our first ever CCIE announcement in the winning channel. Congratulations, Jacob. EITJ has passed the CCNA. Huge congratulations to Jay. I've been talking to him for a very long time, watching his journey, and just so excited to be able to announce his CCNA win here in the podcast. So congratulations, Jay. Chris Glesner has passed the CCNA as well. Angel has passed the LPI Linux Essentials exam. Narut passed the CCSP. PJ Spyro finished their Masters in Network Technology. Congratulations. Peter Hunt passed the Oracle Cloud Architect Associate. J.R. Cortez 25 started a new position as a Unix Systems Administrator and also passed the Linux Foundations exam. Nittany CLI made the Dean's List last semester. Congratulations, Nittany. And Ethan interviewed for a core network engineer position and was called less than 2 hours later after the initial interview and was presented with an offer. So he's gone from first line support to network engineer to now core IP network engineer in just 9 months. Congratulations, Ethan. Era Disabled passed the AWS Solutions Architect Associate exam. Congratulations. And our very own Andy Laptev, co-host Andy, has started a new position at Juniper as a product manager for Cloud Ready Data Center Platform. Congratulations, Andy. We are so excited for you and finally able to announce this on the podcast. So you're going to hear a whole lot more about it in this episode. So congratulations, Andy. We are so excited for you. Thank you to new Patreons, Brandon Polker, Adam Pawlowski, Stephen K., Dallin Bryce, and Quinn Snyder. Thank you so much for your support of what we do here at the Art of Network Engineering podcast. If you're interested in joining our Patreon program, you can go to patreon.com/artofneteng. And we thank all of our listeners for your support. We've had just an absolutely incredible year. We are looking forward so much to 2022. We wish you all a very happy new year, and we can't wait to bring some exciting new content to you. Now back to the show. All right, let's get going with the show. I am very excited to welcome our guest this week. He is the author of one of my favorite books, Mastering Python for Networking. Please welcome to the show, Eric Chou.
Hey,
Eric, how you doing?
It's good to be here. Longtime fan, and so it's good to be here talking to you guys in voice, right? I'm always on the Patreon chat, but now it's talking to you guys in person, virtually. So that's great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I know you're up to a ton, but I have to honestly tell you, this has been one of my favorite books in all my studies. I think you really broke it down in a very consumable way. It's very relatable as far as approaching from a network engineer perspective. So I definitely keep this one on the shelf and reference it from time to time. And I really want to thank you for all your support of what we do here on the podcast. And I know that you have very graciously given away a few copies of your book, and we just really appreciate everything you do for us, Eric. So genuinely, thank you very much.
Yeah, likewise, AJ. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job in creating this community. To be honest, I've looked at and I've tried to join other communities and try to participate, but this is the one I choose to stick around for. Like the other communities are not. I mean, I don't want to put down other community. I just say this one fits my brain better, fits my personality better. I always like a warm, encouraging environment. I always feel like you don't have to put other people down in order to elevate yourself up. So I think this one fits that kind of mindset, right? Like it's always just, we're all just part of this path. So there's no point in having a zero-sum mindset. So I think this is a great community, and if there's any more I could do for guys, it'll be great, and I'll be happy to happy to contribute. Hopefully I have, right? But I want to do more.
Careful what you offer, Eric. We might take advantage of you.
Please do. Just list them out, and I'll like try to knock them out and put a checkbox next to it.
Well, let's start. Where do you work now, and what do you do there?
Yeah, so I work for A10 Networks now. I've been with A10 for about it's going on 6 years. It's funny listening to Andy because I was a cable guy for about 4.5 years. I was with Time Warner Cable. I do the cable run. I know Home Pass, DOCSIS 1.0. I don't know, UBRs, Universal Broadband Router. Those are right up my wheelhouse. We grew the particular market that I was in. We grew it from about 40 users to about 28,000 users in about 3 years, 2 to 3 years. So we saw that growth when people were trying to get the cable broadband. So I was a cable guy, and I was also part of Juniper Networks, and it's a very decent company. And I'll tell you one thing, right? Like, so
decent.
It's a great.
You got
company.
your glass door right here, Andy.
No, it's a great company, and I'll tell you, like, after I left around I think June-ish timeframe, and I think they go by like the accounting year to like June to June or something like that. But anyway, so the point was they actually gave me a bonus after I left. Right. So like I was entitled for that bonus, but I chose to leave because of family, circumstances, and needed to start a new job. So I wasn't expecting it. So after I started the new job, my old manager called me up, and he was just like, "Oh, we appreciate everything you've done for us. You left on a good term, and here's some bonus." And I don't know if any company would do that, right? Like after you left, you're a stranger to them on the street. So, but Juniper was one of those companies that did that. So, kudos to Juniper, and I wish you the best of luck. Congratulations. And, I wish you all the best, really, just like the rest of the Patreons, the rest of the hosts on the show.
Thank you, Eric. So just for context, I've been working a long time and I've never received a bonus. So the fact that I'm going to a company who gives bonuses to people after they quit, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. I mean, obviously it's not unheard of now at this point, but that's pretty cool.
I'm just excited to receive my first bonus.
Nice.
Anyway.
Nice. Yeah, and they're very down to earth. So I used to work so when I was working for Juniper, I was actually in their headquarters, right? So Juniper has this weird structure where there's like building 1, 2, and 3, and 2 is actually the headquarters. 1 and 3 were on the side, so which is kind of weird structure. But I was in building 2, and that's where the cafeteria is. So people would come from all 3 buildings, go to the cafeteria. I see the CEO there all the time. I see all the management. I always feel comfortable walking up to them, just shoot some breeze with them. So it's a very, I mean, granted, this was like, I forgot what it was, like 2005. But I think, like you mentioned, culture matters. It comes from the top down. So hopefully they kept that culture, and it seems like they did. So it's cool.
Hey, man. Thank you.
So you said you're at A10 Networks now. What do you do there?
Yeah, so I am actually a security researcher. So A10 is kind of F5 competitor. So F5, A10 starts with load balancers. They now call it ADC, application. I don't know what they see, but anyway, so F5 has the biggest market share. It's like more than, I don't know, whatever percentage. And then Citrix, I think, is the second biggest market share for ADC providers, and A10 is number 3. However, we're pretty big in Japan, so I want to say we're number 1 in Japan as far as market share because of relationship, previous founder, that sort of stuff. So so that is what we do for the majority of our I guess revenue stream, but also ADC is not shall we say like a growth market. So we're heavily pivoted into security. And so our other product line is DDoS prevention. So I work in that group. So we started, almost started along with that product on the TPS product line. But right now, when I first joined them, I was in professional services, and I was in SE handling one of the top accounts. And then I left. I went back to Azure, Microsoft Azure, and then I came back to A10 to start with my manager on the security research team, and it's been 6 years since we did that. We grew the team from just me and him. It was a brand new team, security research, and we grew that team to about 5, soon to be 6 people. It's been fun. So I should say I'm probably just like a plumber, right? Like whatever is necessary to get the job done, I'll do. So I do, application development. I do a lot of DevOps stuff. I talk to the customer. I talk to vendors and just do all kinds of stuff. Like whatever needs to be done. Like it's almost like we have a startup mindset because it's such a small team. So I would go physically rack and stack stuff, and I would go and at the same time, I would talk to our top customer and trying to sell our service and tell them why we're better at our competitor or whatnot, what's our advantage and so on. So that's just kind of in a nutshell. I want to say I'm just a janitorial staff.
So wow. you hit on kind of a hot button trigger word. I'll take Dan's phrase. You triggered me. Okay. And you mentioned DevOps. So you said you did some DevOps. Can you kind of give a high level explanation of what DevOps is and what you were doing to make it work?
Well, and also to add on a little bit to Tim's there is, and how does that relate to security research?
Yeah, that's it. That's a good question. So DevOps is pretty big topic, right? So I'm not sure if we could cover all of it, but to me, DevOps is a combination of development and ops. So you have to take both of them at the same time. So you look at things in the systematic view. So if something you do is great for development but sucks for operations, then it doesn't do a good grade, right? But if something is good for operations but very bad for development, then that too is not a good DevOps principle. So I would say DevOps, the first principle is look at things in totality. And the second is to do fast iterations. So you do small changes all the time. So you could back out and implement stuff at a rapid pace. So I don't want to do the Facebook, move fast and break stuff, but that's almost, kind of the common way of thinking about it, right? You want to do incremental small changes. And then the third part is the feedback. So once you do the change, you want to get the feedback immediately. So you know how well you did or how well you did not do, and then either roll back, continue, and so on. So you just kind of rinse and repeat these three things: system view, a quick iteration, and then feedback. So those to me are the kind of the three pillars of DevOps. And for me in particular, when I say DevOps, because it's kind of tricky doing security research, especially if you have a small budget. So we work with multiple cloud providers. So we try to make everything OpEx as opposed to CapEx. We don't have a lot of money to spend, and we need to do things really quickly so we know whether it works or not. And then so we can either continue or we back out. And we probably, since the start of this team, we probably back out just as much project as we have going on. It's kind of a 50-50 split. So in my day job, we try a lot of different things just to see whether it works or not, whether it's honeypot, whether it's, interaction with the command and control center, whether it's trying to decode, some kind of vulnerability. So we try a lot of that, and we try to do everything in OpEx. So therefore, the end result is actually we work with maybe 4 or 5 different cloud providers. And so logistically, that makes it very difficult, right? Like you don't have something that works across all of them. So you do have to be agile. You do have to be kind of find common places. I've certainly made my share of mistakes, but also I learned a lot of lessons along the way. So I hope that answered the question, but let me know if something is not clear.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for going through that.
Yeah. So, Eric, I want to go back in time to a place where maybe you didn't know anything about network automation.
Or what a DevOps was.
Yeah.
That's like yesterday or? Yeah, no. So I definitely was a network engineer in the very, very traditional sense. So when I started this field, I worked for a small ISP back in Southern California. So that is when I first started knowing what networking was, or what an Ethernet was, Cat5, that sort of stuff. And so went on the traditional route, like the Cisco CLI. So the way, this was 2000, right? The turn of the millennium. So the way to move forward was actually to get more and more familiar with Cisco. And Cisco provides you with this, nice path of certification. So I went and get my CCNA, got my NP. I got a bunch of CCNP specialization. In fact, I think at one point, I have all the NP specialization that they offer. It's like security, voice over IP, whatever. Wow. And then I went on to get the IE back in 2008. But at 2008, I was already working for a top cloud provider. I was working for Amazon. So at that time, they were really pushing the boundaries, and they were aggressively moving away from any like vendor-based technology. So so it wasn't offer me, it did not offer me any additional value to continue to pursue like DEs. I mean, in fact, I don't think DE existed back then, but I did renew my CCIE once. And then when it comes to renew again, it was just like, there's so many other stuff that I had to do and take priority. So I decided not to renew it. So right now I could not claim I'm a CCIE because it expired back in whenever. But 22460, I don't think anybody could take that number though.
It is retired.
It is retired. It will go to the grave with me. I hope, but I don't know. But
Eric, was it hard to let that expire?
I thought it would be, but it wasn't really that hard because at the time, I think I was very headstrong into network automation already. And, it was just like, you only have so much brain space, right? So my brain space were already like half of it was work and the other 2/3 was automation, like Python automation. How do I get this done? So there doesn't really leave a lot of space for like worrying about certification and all that. And I would say for companies such as Microsoft and Amazon, which was, basically the two companies I stayed for 10 years, certification really wasn't that big of a deal. It was like, oh, it's nice. Especially if you're already in, right? If you're already in, it's like your value is based on the trail of work that you've done rather than, like external validation. Especially, I don't know if I don't know if I would piss people by saying this, but I would say these cloud providers, they live in their own bubble, right? And in a way, they have their nose up a little bit. So it's almost like, oh, yeah, it's nice that you're a CCIE, but what about X, Y, and Z, right? Like, what about this thing that we thought was so cool, and like we're pushing the boundaries, and we're changing the world, and thumping the chest kind of stuff. So it wasn't really hard to let it expire. I would have to say, when you're in that environment, you kind of take that mindset as well. Now that I'm not, I know they're in a bubble. I know there are a lot of stuff that's unrealistic about them, but at the time, it wasn't hard to let it expire.
So if I'm hearing you right, Eric, you kind of made it sound like the cloud environments made you start to think more vendor agnostically. Is that also what pushed you into network automation, that you had to do things more quickly, more efficiently, or what really pushed you toward automation?
Yeah, well, it was to survive, really. That was the truth. I told about this story on David Bumble's one time, but I'll repeat it again. So there was, when I joined Amazon, it was like 6 months into the job, and I was in this group troubleshooting. There was like an issue that came up, and me and this other person were both troubleshooting this issue, and we're trying to find out whether it was a networking issue or not. And we're both looking at just tons and tons of logs, and we're trying to make ways out of this just jumble of information. And I struggle with it. I was trying to troubleshoot, and this other guy was just like, oh, F this, I'm just going to write some script. And then, so he wrote like a Perl script and went through all the logs, and to prove that it wasn't his issue. So it was just like, and he went on at 5. And me, on the other hand, I was like looking at network logs. I was trying to correlate the timing between like different devices. I was looking at our monitoring tool, and I stayed like 4 additional hours or something like that. And I don't think I even solved it. It was like 4 hours. I almost died. I was like, I better just go home. So it was just like, oh my God. It's like, I got to get me some of that Perl magic. Yeah, it's just like crazy, right? Wow. And then, so I was like, okay, I got to get me some of that Perl magic. But but it wasn't like smooth sailing back then, right? It wasn't smooth sailing ever since. It's like, oh, I discovered Perl, and then now enlightenment. It wasn't like that. It was just like, I struggle with Perl. It doesn't fit my brain. It almost feels like, there was this book called Learning Perl, right? And it was like, it's thin. And I feel like every time I want to write a new script, I have to open up that book again, because I would just immediately, I wrote my first script. I resisted so much. I would just close that book and forget everything I've learned. And then next time I would need to write another script, I need to go get that book again. And then, it's the Camel book. I still remember the cover. I remember like it was blue, and I so hated that book, but I needed that book. And so until I found Python, so Python really kind of stuck with me. I think just the way they structure it, the way that the community behave, or the syntax was presented, like really stuck with me. So I think because of where I'm in now, like a lot of people ask me, should I learn Python? Should I learn Golang? Should I stick with Perl? Like whatever it is. And my answer is always be to find something that fits your brain, right? Like go give it a shot. And there's no religion here. If there's something fits you better, then go for it. Learn how you learn. And that's the most important thing. Because I was that way. Like I couldn't write a Perl script if my life depended on it. So.
Eric, I think you said something important in there. Well, you said a lot of awesome things, but when you, like for me, when I saw AJ wave his magic Ansible wand once in the demo, it's the first time I saw automation and realized what it could do for me. You know, like when you saw your buddy, because I troubleshoot the same way. I do everything manually. I go through logs. It's awful. You're trying to correlate. I mean, I think that rings true, you know, for a lot of people probably listening. But when you saw that guy just run a script, I mean, my jaw dropped when you said that. He ran a script and proved it wasn't his network. I'm like, holy crap, like that sounds amazing. And even at my last job, I mean, they're running an MPLS network. You got to touch like 36 devices anytime you touch the network. And I watched this Python magic that they built. I mean, it'd just be untenable. I couldn't touch 4 dozen devices every window to update all the LSPs, but poof, Python. So I'm just saying that once you see that, like, oh my God, look at this. Because prior to me seeing that magic that AJ did or the magic at work, it's like, what is this? And what am I going to do with this? And it's all so confusing. So just for me, that's been a real helpful thing. And I'm nowhere near, I have a lot to learn, right? But I'd also want to call you out, like in your community engagement. I mean, you reached out to a couple of us and offered to help personally, you know, with our Python journey. And that just really, not to take us off track here, but I just think it speaks to, you know, you're a busy guy, you're an author, you have a job, you know, you have a family, and then you're like, hey guys, if I can help you one-on-one, let me know. I mean, that just really, I really appreciate that. And I just want to thank you publicly, because I think that says a lot about, you know, you and how much you care. So.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I think I was going to say, I think one thing for me, where automation really comes in or wows me, I guess, is when there's something that's just a pain in my ass and it's repetitive, I have to do it several times. That's whenever it's like, all right, we're going to figure this shit out. That's when I start going to I'll be a script kiddie. I don't care. You know, you call me what you want to, but I'm going to figure something out in that sense. And it sounds like that was kind of your scenario there, that, you know, you were running through all those logs and apparently about killed you. I've never seen logs kill anybody, but I believe you. So it sounds like something, you know, you had a major pain, and then that like triggered your, I mean, because would you say automation was kind of a life-changing event for you? Because I mean, now you've wrote a book about it. Now you know you're diving so deep into this. So from that pain in your life, like you transitioned into something completely different. That's just that's crazy.
Yeah. So I think to answer that question, I think I could go back to what Andy was saying as well, which is context matters, right? Like if you look at something, if you could see a mirror of yourself and the problem that you could solve, then it becomes so much more motivational. It becomes so much more relevant to you. You're solving the problem in front of you. So I think context matters. But when I first started in, you know, a pro land or getting in touch with Python, there was no context for network automation and Python. I think, what's his name? Edelman. So I think he had he was in the process. Yeah, Jason Edelman. He was in the process. Sorry, he was the guest on my show. But anyways, so Jason actually had the O'Reilly. Like he wrote like a booklet on the O'Reilly, but he started with that, and then he was in the process of making it into the eventual book that O'Reilly had. But he was delaying it for like 3 years, and he was in the process of doing that. And I was the tech reviewer for the first 50%. But at the same time, there was no other context for using Python for network automation. There was no Netmiko. There was no Napalm. There was no Nonir. There was nobody else really. I mean, I'm sure somebody else was doing it, like Jason, for example, he with his 1PK and all that. But somebody else was doing it, but nobody was publicly saying how, like, this whole path, right? So I sat down and like, okay, I sure poke myself in the eye a lot. I sure, bump my head against the wall many, many times. How about if I just like summarize them? So to have this representation and to say, well, here's all these things. Here's this book that I wish I had when I started out this journey. And so my target audience was the younger Eric when he started this. So to each of your question to Andy, yes. So context matters. Absolutely. Like now that you see all these other people are doing network automation and Python, and we could carry each other up and help each other, that's great, right? And then, of course, to Dan's point that, you have to solve the problem in front of you. And obviously it changed the trajectory of my career for sure. And thus, by extension, my family, my wife, and going along that publication line, so I, of course, you always want to improve, and you want to take more control of your content, and so on. So, getting into self-publishing and all of that. So yes, that started it all. It changed everything. It changed my trajectory. Network automation changed my life. And, now I get to talk about it with awesome guys like you guys.
Awesome. So I guess while we're talking about it, like what was kind of like the catalyst that directed you to creating the book?
Well, like I said, I think representation matters and context matters. It's just like, when people talk about female representation in network engineering, when people talk about, minority representation in upper management, context matters, representation matters. So what I really wanted to do was to go out and show people that there's this, I understand data science is cool, and like, just straight up programming is cool, web development is cool, security cool, which all exists within the Python realm. But I don't see anybody out there on the mountaintop waving the flag and say Python could be used for network automation as well. So that was the biggest driver, is for me to go and say, here it is, right? Here's something that I thought was cool, and here's something that I've been pursuing, and hopefully somebody else will find it useful. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story, AJ. So when so the whole thing that led to the book was because I've been blogging about, these stuff that I've been doing, mostly SDN, and one of the article on OpenFlow ranked pretty high on Google at one point. So they so Pack saw that, they reached out and said, did you want to do a book? And I'm like, okay, good. Networking for Python. And I actually, even after we finalized the detail, I went back into Pack and said, are you sure this is what you want, right? Like, because networking in Python could be like server networking, could be like sockets, could be UDP streams, TCP stream. And that's what most people think of when they say Python and networking. So I went on a double check with them and go, are you sure? I'm happy to write a book, but are you sure this is what you want? This is okay. And they came back twice and said, this is fine. And I'm like, okay, but nobody's gonna buy it, right? So I was, so I wrote the book really, really quickly before they find out they made a mistake. And I even thought about, I calculated the break-even point for the publisher. I'm like, they gave me a chance. They shouldn't lose money on it, right? So I even calculated the break-even point. I'm like, okay, 6 months after the book published, if it doesn't hit this point, then I'll probably spend my own money, and buy half of that quantity so they don't lose so much money. So that was how insecure I was and how unsure I was of the topic. But of course, it found an audience, and I'm super grateful for it. Thank you guys for your support.
Oh, of course. Did you hit the break-even point? I think I know the answer.
I did. But the funny thing was, I think 2 weeks before the book was published, the first edition that was, I saw the creator for the request package, and he was also the co-author for a Hitchhiker's Guide for Python, I think. So he actually said he was going to donate all of his book proceeds to PyGirls to promote, programming STEM, education for ladies in tech. So I was like, okay, if he could do that, I could do that as well. So I'm actually, then I actually, very publicly on the blog say, so I'm going to donate all of my proceeds to charity and all of that. So it did hit the break-even point, but it did not benefit me financially, which is great. You know, I'm happy to do that.
That's really cool of you.
What was the charity that you put all the proceeds to?
So it was a combination. So I actually I don't want to just blindly donate money. I want to know what the charity does, what the purpose they're driving toward, and so on. So initially, what I did was I asked the people who helped me, like my manager or the book reviewer or the editors, what they're passionate about. And then, you know, if there's a particular charity that they want to do, donate to. So they would say, oh, you know, yeah, so I'm you know, I like UNICEF, or somebody else was saying, you know, I feel very passionate about homelessness or, you know, the environment. So I would make contributions to each of those. And then later on, I would go out and research some of the charities. And I have a default charity, which is the Tzu Chi Foundation, which is a Buddhist compassion relief foundation that does a lot of charity work. So that's my default for donations. But some of the other charities is, you know, whether people, you know, whoever I bump to, like, for example, if, you know, Jason Gooley, who was on your show and he was on my show, and I asked him, you know, afterwards, what are some of the, you know, homelessness was his biggest passion project at the time. So, you know, make donation to there. I think I started a blog post and track all the charities I donated to up till like March of 2019 or something like that. And then I just got lazy. I still do it, but I just don't, you know, track it and like, you know, I don't want to feel like, you know, like, look at me, you know, I'm doing all these great stuff. I just want to make sure like they're accounted for. And I think by that time, people should know I'm serious about it. Sure. And so on.
So is that still in place today? So if somebody buys a copy of the book, are you still making donations to various organizations?
I still do it, but it's not 100%. So the first edition and the second edition is 100%. But starting from the third edition, I start to have some overhead, like, you know, hosting my own site, you know, doing the podcast hosting and all of that. So those starts to have a cost associated to them. So I would, you know, and again, I don't want to feel like I want more publicity or like, hey, you know, look at me, I'm so great, that sort of stuff. So I don't say it anymore, but I still do a large chunk of it to charity, but I reserve the right to like pay the podcast hosting company instead. So for the third edition, it's not 100%. And for the Kafka book, I haven't even seen a dime, but when I do, you know, certain part of it will go to charity as well. It's just like, I want to be more low key about it. Sure.
I mean, you're trying to grow the brand, and then you can continue to give more back in. It's like a balancing act, right? And yeah, I mean, if you got to have a platform, you got to cover those costs, and I think we do the same thing here, right? Like we have the Patreons, we have our merch sales and stuff like that, so we cover our costs, and then we'll go ahead and give the rest back to community. And so, yeah. We feel you.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Eric.
No, I was going to say, like, when I talk to other content creators, they get it, right? Like, or open source project maintainers. It's like some dude is doing in basement, you know, donating his time writing these open source projects, but they're not really getting compensated for it, even though like thousands of people use their project. So when I talk to other content creators, when I talk to other creators in general, they get it. But there's a certain portion of, you know, like the audience out there who think open source should just be free, or, you know, content should just be free, or like, you know, creators shouldn't make any money because, you know, they build their project upon other projects, which is very true, right? Like if the open source community doesn't exist, my book wouldn't exist, right? Like it leverages all these knowledge. So it's very true, but it's also about sustainability, right? Like you have to pay the bills. You don't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be retirement money, or it doesn't have to be, you know, millionaire money, but you still have to sustain your operation. You still have to have a reasonable amount of standard. So when I talk to other content creators, they tend to agree with me, but I also met people online who's, kind of against the idea of content creators, making profit out of it. Like anytime, doesn't matter if you're discounted 99%, or it's like, no, you're making 1%. You're getting $1 out of that, $49.99 book. So it's just like, I think it's a balancing act.
That's a whole other episode. I think I could talk to you for an hour about that, Eric, like valuing your time, right? I mean, I have instances in my life where I didn't value my time enough to charge friends or family for skills that I have. And then when they need, when I need something from them, they come out and help me, then I get charged. So like the difference really is I didn't value my time and they did. Right.
Right.
I mean, that's the difference. So we set our price, and I don't think you should be. Time is the greatest resource we have. And if we're spending time creating content, writing books, like you said, I mean, there's no shame in being compensated for our time because we have, specialized skills. I wanted to go back really quick, and I apologize if you touched on this. Maybe I was reading Patreon comments, so we could cut this out if you did. But you said something that caught my attention. You're this heavy hitting, very smart engineer, Python author guy, and you said you were a cable guy at one point, right? So my ears perked up. So then I started researching, stalking you on LinkedIn. So how does a finance major, how did you go, like, you're a finance major, you were a cable guy, you became a network engineer. How? Because a lot of our listeners, how do I get in? How do I get that job? How do I, and I've had a ton of people come to me because I put out a video about, hey, how I went from cable guy to network engineer. Like, that's not an easy jump. Mm-hmm. So your origin story kind of caught my attention. How was cable guy before college, after college? How did you go from cable guy to network engineer, I guess is the question in all that rambling.
Yeah. So how long do you have? No, just kidding. No, I'll try to do it in 5 minutes. Right. So the biggest thing I think I would recommend people to do is to do internships and to try out the things that you think you want to do as much as possible. So when I was in college, I'm always working in work studies, internships. So I interned at various locations. So I interned at Kmart out of all places, right? So I was in retail. I was at Kmart for an internship for 1 semester, 1 quarter. And then I interned at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter for financial wealth management because I was a finance major. And then I interned at a local ISP. So, I should say I was a finance major, but I also was an MIS minor. So I think there was like a total of 2 people who was a finance major, also MIS minor. But I'm also have this like multi-interest, and even my major was at Cal Poly was FRL, so finance, real estate, and law. So I study all 3, and then I have a minor on computer. So I have this like multi-interest level that I always want to explore. And then so I did all these internships, and I found out that I hated finance, right? Like I hated. I just don't like it, right? And I think one of the things that stood out to me really big at the time was in finance, it's really, at least at the time, it was a lot about seniority. It was about relationship building and like pay your due when you're a junior financer and then move your way up until you manage bigger and bigger portfolio and so on. Whereas when I was interning at an ISP, it's like you could make an impact right away, right? Like I was like building kernels. I was taking customer calls. I was handling a lot of projects that I felt like made an impact on. So I decided, and also, this was the year 2000. So I graduated in 2000. So the few years before then it was a dot-com boom, right? It eventually became the dot-com bomb, but it was dot-com boom. So it was so much easier to get a job, to get a meaningful position in tech than in finance. So that internship in the local ISP turned into a full-time position. And from that full-time position, I sort of outgrew the position. And at the time, Time Warner Cable, it wasn't even Time Warner Cable. It was Roadrunner. So Roadrunner was a joint venture between multiple MSOs, which is cable companies. They pull their money together and they build like kind of this backbone that they all share. So like Bright House and Time Warner Cable, AT&T Broadband, and Adelphia. I don't even think Adelphia back then, but anyways, so a bunch of cable companies built Roadrunner, and they were launching markets in each of these cable locations. So at the time they were saying, hey, who wants to move to California desert to launch this Roadrunner service? And people with family didn't want to go because it was the desert. More senior engineer, they have plenty of options. They didn't want to go. So I was there and I raised my hand. I'm like, just give me the exposure. I'm willing to, live in the desert and so on. So that's how I became a cable guy. So I shouldn't say a cable guy because it was a hybrid, right? So half of it was, it's just like the, Andy, what I'm talking about, HFC, right? Hybrid fiber network, a coax network. So I was a hybrid. So I was, half of my job was dealing with like the cable, stuff like frequency division, multiplexing, coax, fiber, and the other half was dealing with the core of networking. So it's very much BGP, very much Sonnet at the time, very much backbones. So so it was a hybrid, but I think the difference was that I was actually in the division. I was there, driving around doing home pass. I was doing the planning. I was looking at the sub count. I was talking to the head end engineers about what's the upstream downstream ratio and so on. So so in a nutshell, that's what happened.
Yeah, you weren't a cable guy.
No, to be fair, I was working
I
with
really
them.
I was just going to say, I didn't know what BGP was when I was a cable guy.
Yeah. Well, by that time I think the reason I got hired was because I already got my NP back then. So, so they thought I knew some stuff. I didn't know anything, but they thought I could learn if I put my mind to it. So they gave me the option. They gave me the chance to learn and grow into the job.
I just think there's a valuable lesson in there. You tried different things, right? Through your internships, and you were able to, a finance major to wind up in tech, I think is pretty cool. And, you were able to do that by investigating different things and being curious. So it's, when I hear cable guy to like Python author guru, I'm like, wait a minute, how did you do that? So thank you. I appreciate it. I think people will find that helpful.
Yeah. So I think it's,
so Eric,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say it's crucial to just try different things, because you could read all about it as much as you want. You could talk about it as much as you want, but until you go there and do it on a day in and day out basis, you don't know what this is about. So I was very glad to have that mindset and just try out different things, and eventually found out. And I was super lucky to find the things I want to do early on, so I don't go take all these this path that I might end up maybe regret or going back on. But sorry to cut you off, AJ. Go ahead.
No. Quite all right. So one thing I wanted to do is I think while you were explaining your journey, I think I heard you say you worked at AWS and Azure. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit to what's it like working in the cloud?
It was really interesting. It was really fun. It was really tiring and just exhausting, I would say. But it was fun because remember, I joined in 2006. There was no cloud back then. Amazon was very much a retail site. So they launched S3 in 2006, like March of 2006. And I joined in August of 2006. So we knew the cloud was going, like upward trend, but there was no way anybody could have predicted how big it was going to be. It was until the next year they launched EC2, and then it just kind of blew up. So what was really fun was this hockey stick growth, and anytime that you could join a service that has a hockey stick growth. So I was lucky enough to join, Roadrunner when, cable broadband was rolling out, right? And then I was lucky enough to join AWS where cloud was taking off. So it was just so much learning, and there's so much work to be done that you could be relatively inexperienced and just, fresh out of college, and it would put you down in like multi-million-dollar projects. So it was really fun because it was in the early stage, and I was the team that launched CloudFront, right? And I was the guy who and it was super fun to do that, and I was the guy who eventually moved to like business development and negotiated a lot of the deals for Amazon's footprint on CloudFront. Was able to go to China to get the integration with Joyo.com, was able to negotiate deals with, various telcos for, footprints. That's where you learn a lot. So I would say it's very exhausting and tiring, but it's always very fulfilling, and professional growth was unparalleled. And it was kind of the same thing with Microsoft as well, because when I joined Microsoft, Azure was in its infancy. In fact, I think the automation bit was more on the Bing side. They have this team. This is all public information, right? They have this team called Autopilot. So Autopilot was under Bing, which Qi Lu presides over, and they were doing a lot of automation. And Azure was just recently got out of like the Red Dog stage, which was the project code name, Red Dog, and they were trying to get their footings. So it was really fun to be in that early stage as well. It was kind of political, being Microsoft and multiple billion-dollar verticals, but it was different learning experience, but I would say, it's a lot of professional growth, but at the same time, you got to be willing to put in the hours. You got to be willing to put in, the effort and all of that. And I wasn't joking about burning out, right? Because after Azure, and I was just so tired, and my second daughter was born, I knew I wasn't, just not going to be put into the same amount of hours that I could before. So I went to like a very traditional enterprise network after Azure with like total of 2 network engineers. So I would just go from this whole totally different spectrum. It's like, okay, forget it. I'm just not, I'm so tired. I'm not even going to go to like Arista or these vendors. I'm just going to go and finish my job so I could go home at 5 and have dinner with my wife and my young kids. So, so that was kind of my experience in a nutshell.
How was that transition going from like Azure and AWS to a more traditional type enterprise network? Because my perspective, I've only been at an enterprise network, right? And so it's always like this. It's always like this magical world that oh my God, you work at AWS or you're at Azure, you're at Microsoft, So I'm just curious, like, what was the transition the opposite way?
Yeah, it was. I hate to say this, but it was kind of boring. So I went there and then I left after 3 months.
Don't hurt me like that. Don't do that to me.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be transparent and honest, right? So it was almost like you're moving on a fast train, and then all of a sudden you go to the station and everything just goes zoom, and it just all slow down in like slow motion, right? So it was a bit boring for me. And eventually, I think I stayed there for like 3 months or 4 months, barely stay out of my probation period. And then I joined A10. So it was turning out to be, so I wanted to find a happy medium, right? Between like, it's, whatever it is. And then, like life in the fast lane, right? I want to find a happy medium. And boring. Just go ahead and call it what it is. No, it was stable, right? So between something like really stable and then something that was not as fast as the cloud, like the speed of the cloud. So I actually went to A10. So my friend was one of my good buddy joined A10, And so we were talking about, the possibilities and all of that. And back then, I think A10 was pre-IPO. So of course, that was like a big draw for me at the time. I've never worked for a company that was pre-IPO'd and, my IPO dream. So I kind of checked that box.
Very cool. Very cool. I have to imagine that's like, I'm not really into drugs, but this is the thing that I can relate it to, right? Like, so, working for a large company like Azure or AWS has got to be like being on some killer drugs, man. And then you take a step back to like a smaller company, and it's just like, what is this?
AJ, your point of reference is hard drugs?
I'm telling you, like, I really, I didn't really know what else to liken it to here, but it's just like, it's tickling so many senses to work at a large company like that at the speed and the pace and the scale, and then to come back down.
And those would be your withdrawals. Okay. All right. I think we're on the same page.
He's saying AWS and Azure is like cocaine, and then a traditional enterprise network is like Benadryl.
AWS is a hell of a drug.
Yeah. And my friends listening, but I would say also, they're both good companies, right? Like enterprise, and they're all valid work that is valuable to the society. But what I also think is it takes a certain type of personality and certain type of like adrenaline junkie almost in order to sustain like 10 years in a cloud environment, right? So if you put that into a context, so it wasn't that the job was bad, the enterprise job was bad or boring. It was just the person that I was, or the person that I am, it wasn't a good fit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's really more about fit. It wasn't about the job was bad. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not trying to, make anybody feel better or anything. Sure. I'm just trying to be honest and say, well, no.
And I wasn't saying it was bad or good. It was just sure. Different, right? Like you're working for such a large company that at the speed and the scale that they were moving and growing AWS, and then you step back to a normal company, right? The majority of the companies, and it's just such a smaller scale, comparatively speaking, right? Mm-hmm. Like even if the company you were at moved at a quicker pace than other companies, it maybe didn't seem that way because of where you came from, having experienced what you experienced.
Yeah, and also I want to also point out that
just that kind of like relativity.
It was also a different time period for AWS, right? So I know AWS is like, it's always day one, but trust me, it's a different time when you're experiencing that growth initially versus now AWS is like, this thing that everybody knows about. Imagine like I had to go to Nanog multiple times in AppNig or whatever, and I have to explain to people what the cloud was. And like the first thing people ask me is like, what? Why do I want to put my data on your computer? And what about security? Like, what about like VLANs and what about all these other stuff? So it was a very different time. It was just exciting times for me. And like I said, the professional growth was really, really huge. Made the biggest leap, I would say, in both of those locations.
Yeah, but I think also too, and I think you've kind of hinted to this a little bit, but being part of something that's brand new that no one else has, there's some excitement around that, right? Like, if we were coming up with some technology and we were the only people who were doing this, I could see the excitement there of like, well, shit, I want to see this thing through, be the latest and greatest on this. So I can definitely understand that perspective.
Yeah. How many times can you say, I'm the original team that launched, this so-and-so service, right? Or, you can only do that once, really. So I could empathize with people who are, just hop from startup to startup, because you don't get that rush anywhere else. It's like you're on a mission, right? You're on a mission to launch the cloud. You're on a mission to get the service rolling. You truly believe that this is going to change the world, and you're part of something that's bigger than yourself. So 80-hour work week it is.
That's crazy.
Hey A1 fans, AJ here for NetAlly. Never heard of NetAlly? Sure you have. They came from the same group of engineers that brought us network tools from Fluke Networks, NetScout, and now they're NetAlly. They know networking. I'm a network engineer for a partner, and when I go to customers and see they use NetAlly, I know it's going to be so much easier to troubleshoot issues we might run into. The name may have changed to NetAlly, but the way they build tools hasn't changed a bit. They ask, what would a network engineer want to help make their job faster and easier, and then they go build it, just like this Etherscope NXG. NetAlly is here to help. NetAlly, simplicity, visibility, collaboration. Visit netally.com today. Now back to the show.
Eric, I want you to put your educator hat on for a minute. And
Okay.
you talked about earlier when people are learning automation, abstraction, orchestration to find context. So I want to ask you something that it's going to be a very similar question that I asked John Capobianco when he was on here. And it was, what's your advice for people getting started? So traditional network engineers, we can say, hey, go pick up a Network Plus book, go check out the CCNA, and it'll kind of step you through different topics that you kind of need to know to become a network engineer. Would you
go grab a switch?
Would you suggest something similar with automation? Go automate the boring stuff, pick up your book, obviously, or do you really think you need to find that context first, find that thing that you need to fix or the thing that you need to do first before you get into the fundamentals?
Yeah, that was a great episode, by the way. I enjoyed John's episode very much. He's so passionate, and he's like, everybody's his best friend, and you could just like, even through virtually, you could feel his passion off the screen.
Yeah.
And I don't remember John's answer, but my answer would be yes. You want to find that small win first. It's so demotivating when you hit that wall and you don't really know, why you're doing this, right? Just because somebody else, tell you that it's great, just because, somebody said this is going to increase your paycheck by, 20%. Those don't fly when you're like banging your head against the wall at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? However, but if you could find a small win, if you could solve a problem for you and you only, that'd be great. That's the biggest motivator. And the bonus point is if you solve the problem for your team, right? So I remember I was just doing this for myself. I was writing some small script, and so to help me, do some operation in the lab. And one day we hit a problem, and it's a very, very bizarre problem where I'll quickly describe this problem because I think it will put into better context. So the problem was, the upstream, we utilize BGP for ECMP, but the problem was the vendor had a bug where they're not load balancing the distribution correctly, even though the AS path was the same. So what we ended up needing to do was to do something really weird. It's like we need to do an AS prepend on the odd number of switches or something like that, right? So, and the quote unquote programmers in the team, they didn't have a way to do that quickly. And I was like, hey, I have this like small, tiny, like really, script that I just wrote, and maybe I'm able to just do that quickly, right? I remember this was like either Paramico or pexpect. I just able to just specify the switch, log into it, put in the ASN prepend, and then move on to the next switch, and so on and so forth. And it wasn't even great. It was like sequential. It wasn't doing anything fancy, but it solved the problem. And right there and then, I was sold, right? Like these programmers who are very talented, who are hired by one of the big software companies in the world, rely on this little sucky little script to solve a problem. And I couldn't describe the feeling of like fulfillment. So I would say that's I don't know about you guys, but that's the biggest motivation for me, was to solve my own problem, and at the same time perhaps solve other people's problem as well. And that goes into, like you said, Tim, like put the educator hat on, right? So I want to share that fulfillment. I want to have other people feel the same way too. So I just, put it down and feel free. And yeah, the book costs money, but the code is actually free, right? The code is actually just public. So anybody who wants to grab a piece of that code, feel free to do so. And I wish you, I wish you could feel that same feeling that I felt before.
Very cool. Very cool. I'd like to spend some time. You're working on a new book, and so I'd like to explore that a little bit. If you could, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Look at this. I even have a print copy, even though this was a self-published.
I was about to say, I don't think you had that the other day, did you?
No, so I had like a digital copy. Yeah, so this is again like I typically. So first of all, I want to I want to have a faster pace of publishing because, mastering Python networking was great, but it covers so much and technology moves so fast. There's a time that I want to update like a portion of it, but I wasn't able to wait till the next edition to print out and so on. So whereas this time when I write this Kafka up and running book, I do it through LeanPub. So anybody who had purchased the book is able to get the latest update. And I'm able to do a lot more experiments. So this book, I discounted to like $4.99. So, for the price of less than a latte, you could, pick up the book and hopefully be useful to you. If nothing else, you just, gain a new doorstop, right? So that's a new book that I worked on. I think Kafka is kind of a niche topic in the network engineering field. So I also want to use this book to gain the experience, and so I could elaborate on other projects. But this is so far I'm liking the experience of fast iteration and feedback back to the DevOps principle, right? In order for me to get a feedback really quickly. And also this book was, it's only like 160 pages as opposed to like Mastering Python Networking. It gets bigger every edition, like 600 pages or so. So so that's the kind of the new experience I am trialing. It's kind of a science project for me, but thanks for bringing it up.
And what's it called again?
It's called Kafka up and running for network DevOps. So Kafka is this new technology.
So what is that? Yeah.
Yeah. So Kafka is this new technology that we picked up, and it's definitely not for day one operation. It's not something that you take and then you go implement and solve a customer facing problem or a user facing problem. This is basically a big buffer in the middle for services to talk to. So imagine if you build a service like a web service, for example, and you have a bunch of users that comes in, and the users, typically your information doesn't reside on that one server. Typically your information reside on other servers, like a database that you query information from, other APIs that you query from. And imagine if you take that service and duplicate that like 10 times, and then that mesh becomes all the service that you have to talk to. So it becomes a spaghetti of a mess. Whereas Kafka would come in and say, what you want to do is your service was subscribed or published. So it's the publisher subscriber model where you could publish to a topic, and anybody who needs this topic would just subscribe to this topic, and Kafka would take care of like redundancy, duplication of that topic, and multiple subscribers, which is a huge thing. That when you implement the service like this, it's like if I have 5 subscribers and these are like credit card transactions, for example, right? What I need to do is either the subscriber have to coordinate between themselves and say, I already processed this transaction, so nobody else should, or the tool or your source have to say, I already passed the information on to AJ, so Dan, you're not getting this information, right? But that becomes a nightmare when you have multiple sources and you have multiple consumers. So what Kafka does is you just publish to this topic, and Kafka will be in charge of load balancing between the consumers. Say the consumer, like 5 consumers, 1 died, and then I need to distribute it to the rest of the consumers. So Kafka takes takes charge in make sure like the data was only passed once, load balancing the data, make the data redundant, and all of that stuff. So there's also it's an open source project, and there's also a page that just, pages and pages of the companies who uses Kafka and what their use cases are. So Netflix is a huge Kafka user. They actually have I grabbed the stat and I put it in the book. It's like something like 1 billion transactions a day or something like that. So every time you pause a video, it's actually written to a topic. And also like the ordering of messages, right? So typically your topic, you'd be order and be persistent on the timing basis. So, Netflix and LinkedIn. So this project was started by LinkedIn. So Netflix, LinkedIn, Uber Eats, they all publish how they use Kafka. And usually is when you have a mash of services that has, bunch of publishers, bunch of subscribers, and you need to make sure the data integrity, redundancy, and all of the good stuff that you normally expect in a scaled out services. So what I also, besides introducing this tool, was also to put into a network engineering context, right? So how is it relevant to network engineers? Is it just for log aggregation? Is it for monitoring? Is it for management and all of that? So I don't think I did a good job on the second part on, the relevance for network engineering, but hopefully I did a good enough job on the first part that, you're able to take this into your own service and all that. But just from listening to that, I think you guys get creative the idea.
With it.
Exactly. So I think you guys could tell this is not a day one service, right? Like this is not something that you build an API from. This is not something you build a web page from. It's when after you build a web page, after you build an API, you start to scale it out, then you start to worry about all these other stuff. So I want to make that clear. I don't want to mislead anybody who wants to buy this book. Is that this is definitely a day two service. But if nothing else, it's a good technology to be aware of just because it's so prevalent in these, Web 2.0 world.
Now, let me ask this. Is that similar to Zool?
I'm not very familiar with Zool.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
The way you're describing it sounds a lot like what my knowledge of Zool is, and that's not a lot. So, but it just sounds like it.
Did you just make up a word, Dan?
No.
No, we believe you. No, but it's a very common service.
No one knows.
But it's a common service, right? So it's a very common publisher subscriber model. It's just that it's one way of doing publisher subscriber. So you could actually go to like Amazon Web Services. You go to Azure. They offer this PubSub.
Yeah.
I think AWS is called Kinesis. But anyways, I covered that in the book, and is these PubSub model that you could do. But Kafka just does it in a more open source, more transparent way, I feel. So these guys actually, the three creators of Kafka used to work for LinkedIn, and they created this project, they open sourced it, and they went on and co-founded Confluent. And Confluent just went IPO earlier in 2021. What year am I? 2021. And so the street really liked them a lot. So that's, don't take it from me, right? Take it from all these financial analysts. And they're now a public company. So you could look at their run rate, look at who their customers are, who their threats are. So very much like Elastic, right? So Confluent, Elastic, these are companies, back to our content creation conversation, that they're now starting to bank on the open source project and make profit for it. So I'm very excited about these two projects, Elastic and Kafka.
Can you give us some network engineer context? Where might we see Kafka from a network engineering perspective?
Yeah, so I think the most obvious is monitoring and telephony, right? Like not telephony, but monitoring and telemetry. Sure. Yeah. So like just say, for example, if you grab an SNMP stats, right? So I don't know about you guys, but previously in many of the places I worked, whenever somebody needs stats from the networking device, they just pull the networking device. It was easier for them to just go to pull the networking device than to talk to other teams who's already doing the polling, right? Because they don't talk to each other. So we ended up having like 5 SNMP polls from the device. And as you guys know, SNMP pool is in a control plane, and you need to interrupt the data plane, and your CPU just spike up. So there are times where we have like these high CPU spike just from SNMP pools. So imagine if you have a Kafka topic in place where you just pull the information once, store in Kafka, and tell these other, fools that, hey, if you want that information, just go subscribe to it. Right. And call it a day. So that's one thing. You just a very basic, pub sub, but also imagine that very much in our world where when we have that information, SNMP, for example, we need to enhance that data. So it becomes a pipeline where, we need to take that IP address. Maybe we need to go pull like our source of truth to say which data center it's in. Maybe we need to pull financial information to get the asset ID, to get the serial number. We enhance that data and then publish it to the next topic. And then we take that new topic, transform, enhance that data, and publish it to a third topic. So whoever is interested in the raw data could subscribe to the first topic. Whoever is interested in the second set of data could subscribe to this topic, and so on and so forth. And you become a data pipeline. In fact, the subtitle for this book is called Set Your Network Data in Motion. So it's really about not just the publisher and subscriber. We already have that technology. It's a solved problem, but it's more about treating this data in a new way where it's always flowing, always transparent. It's always being enhanced and added or deleted. So monitoring is, monitoring is the most obvious, but also, if you have a huge chunk of sources like your IoT, right? Maybe you have some sensors where, these sensors are counting the steps the cow, step on, because that's very crucial information for, the timing and so on. So then you have this huge amount of services. So instead of having them all talk to in real time for an API to do a post, which they might not even be able to do, that they could just aggregate it into a topic. And then that topic could further be processed for, short-term visibility or long-term data analysis. But it's all just dumped in once, as opposed to having a different service that aggregate them at another time. So I think these two are, kind of the use cases that I could think of. Like I said, I don't think I did a very good job in expanding the network engineering use cases, but hey, it's self-published. So if I think of more, I could just publish it and then people would get the latest update.
There you go.
That's awesome. And I appreciate what you're doing there too. Like you said, something that's low risk, you want to learn the process. And then that way, as you, get better at it, you understand that this iterative world of book publishing, then you can go to higher stakes topics and produce some more books, which I'm sure you're going to do. So
yeah, so that's the hope, anyways. But as our conversation shows, I'm always trying out new things, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But the effort is always there.
Excellent. Well, Eric, you are quite a busy content creator. I'd like to pivot now and kind of discuss all the different things that you work on. Let's start with your podcast.
Sure. Hey, thanks for bringing this up. So the podcast is called Network Automation Nerds Podcast, and it's where a lot of times I talk to interesting people like you guys do, and I always even just not for other people, just for myself, I always want to record them. And a lot of times I think back and go, well, I just talked to John Capobianco about something, and what was it? And like, I wanted to capture that moment, and I wanted to capture, the intelligence and the knowledge that they have. So, that was part of the motive. And also you guys motivated me. You guys inspired me to kind of do that. I had the pilot episode like 2017, I want to say, and then just kind of quiet, just crickets for the next 4 years. And then I saw you guys. I'm like, this is great, right? Like, this is such a great community. I want to, just contribute to it as well. So what's the best way for me to do that? It's almost like, okay, well, just, let me go find these guys or my ex-coworkers or people who are in the, like Dan, you were saying about cloud providers, right? Let me just go ahead and get some of my guys from Microsoft before and tell how it is, right? Like how was it in launching, like a Azure service or whatnot. So that's the origin story of the podcast. Hopefully, I don't know. My biggest fear is always like I don't do it consistently, and but so hopefully I could stick to it this time, like you guys have done.
We'll keep on you.
All right.
You keep on us. We'll keep on you.
All right. That's a deal.
Awesome. And you're also very active in the blogging world too.
Yeah. So what I did was I took a page out of Michael Kennedy from Talk Python. So I think starting this year, he when he record his podcast, he actually record video as well. So because of the pandemic, people are more and more used to having videos with talk to a screen. They have better lighting, they have better cameras. So what I did was I just copied what he did and went ahead. So whenever I record, I will capture the video as well, and it comes in handy because sometimes when you talk to somebody, you want to pull up the webpage, or if you're talking about like a project that they're working on, it was pretty handy to, pull up, whatever information that's relevant. And so it's a different way for people to consume the same content. A lot of times, when there are times when I listen to Michael's podcast, it's like, oh, darn, I wish I'm watching the YouTube video because they're showing these cool stuff on the screen. And I would like pause that and then listen to the next episode. And this original episode, I would go watch the video. So that's what I've started to do, but also the intention to expand on that as well. I think there's a lot I could do as far as getting more people involved and having a easier free on-ramp for Python network automation. And that's the hope, and that's part of the very selfish reason where I reach out to you guys and say, what are you guys working on? How can I help? Is a very selfish reason to make sure I still solve a relevant problem, right? Like I still in touch with the practitioners in the field to, so after aggregating those data, what I wish is to turn around and say, here's, maybe a playlist, or here's the relevant content that you guys could do. So that's the next step for the YouTube channel. So besides all the podcast recording is to have, some sort of tutorial, some sort of playlist for people to consume if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Hey, that's some more secret sauce there, because there's a symbiotic relationship, Eric. Like you're saying, hey, what's going on? How can I help? But then for my seat, I was like, wow, this automation guru is going to like help me learn Python. So it's symbiotic, right? You're reaching out to help people, but then you're getting help too. So that's just, I don't know, man. That's really awesome.
That's going to help in the future as well too. So
yeah, right.
The next people.
Right. Let me get on my soapbox for a second. I think we should all be doing that. Like, how can we help each other? What's going on? Because it really, it's working, right? That's really cool. Yeah.
And that's what I like about you guys. It's like, it was never about just you. I appreciate that, by the way, Tim, AJ, Dan, Andy, everything you guys do is like, you guys built this great culture, a great community. Like I said, I've joined other communities, but this is the one I decided to stick around with. Just like I've joined, I've tried to learn other languages, but Python sticks to my brain better. So I think this one just fits my personality better. And thank you guys for doing this.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Eric. We
A lot of
appreciate that very
bromance
much.
here.
It happens a lot, it's just content creators, network engineers. It's something in the air. It happens a lot. I love it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome, Eric. This has been a super fun conversation. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that we should have? Is there anything else that you're working on now on the side that we should discuss?
No, I think it's pretty much it. It's been a very fun conversation for me as well. You guys feel free to reach out to me if there's any questions. I'm always creating content. So, let me know if there's any ideas that you guys want to hear more about. I'll be happy to entertain the idea. It has to be a right fit too, right? Like if you ask something about I have no idea about, then I can't. But it's been fun. Thank you guys again, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the patrons who stayed, all the way till the end. And thanks, guys.
Awesome. Well, the Patreons definitely make this a little bit more fun. So if you want to join the Patreon program with Eric and all the rest, you can go to patreon.com/artofneteng and join us every week when we are recording the shows. You can chat with us. You can chat with the guest, add your 2 cents, and we'll read it here as we record the show. Eric, I will drop links to all of your social presences and blog posts and podcasts, the books, and your YouTube channel. We'll put all of that in the show notes. So if you want to check out either of Eric's books or his current works, you may do that just with the single click of a button or tap of your thumb or finger, however you get around the internet these days. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. And really, we appreciate the support that you give our community, and you can absolutely expect the same in return.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun. Keep up the good work.
All right. Thanks, Eric. And congratulations again, Andy, for your new victory, your new job at Juniper. And the GOAT plays for Andy.
Nice.
I love it. I think we'll definitely dive into that in a future topic. All right, everybody. I am AJ Murray. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Art of Network Engineering podcast.
Vote for AJ. Don't do drugs.
Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of NetEng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.